There is a very special colonial city tucked away in the mountains, historically known for its gold and silver mines, where you could walk for hours and hours through its stunning and winding streets that would give you the impression of old Europe. And one of these streets is a very narrow, famous, and quite possibly the most romantic street in the country, where for a fee you can share a kiss with a special loved one from balcony to balcony. Needless to say, this city is home to breathtaking architecture, delicious food, and some of the best views of any colonial city. This place is full of interesting traditions such as the Callejoneada, where people walk in large groups through the streets singing and having a good time.
Oh, ¿usted cómo está?
Muy bien.
Ah, muy bien, muy bien.
Sí.
¡De Texas! ¡Aplausos a Texas! ¡Ándale, buen beso en la boca!
The intrigue does not stop there, as this city has many tunnels going through the mountains and even homes, making it one of the most unique places in North America. But despite all of this city is arguably more famous for something very interesting and quite peculiar, and that is a museum of mummies resulting from a tragedy that took place roughly 2 centuries ago, killing many adults and children. So join me as we discover all of this and more in this very fascinating colonial city, and that is the beautiful historic city of Guanajuato in the central part of Mexico that has so much to see and do despite its size. We start our journey in the nearby city of Querétaro, which also happens to be one of the largest and fastest growing cities in the country, and travel westward on one of the country's main highways to get to Guanajuato. This journey from Querétaro to Guanajuato usually takes about 2 hours, depending on traffic, of course. After passing through a few of the suburbs of Querétaro, we exit the city and enter the actual state of Guanajuato shortly thereafter. Being that the state of Guanajuato is one of the most industrialized states in the country, it is common to see many warehouses and factories along the way. And aside from typical industrial output, these factories also produce products for popular brand names of food. At about an hour and a half after leaving Querétaro and after transitioning onto different highways, we finally make it onto the highway that will actually take us into Guanajuato. And as we do so, we start to see the mountains in which this city is situated, as well as agave plantations, being that we are not too far from tequila country. At about 10 to 20 minutes after entering this dedicated highway to Guanajuato, we get into the foothills of the mountains, and shortly after we start to see the outskirts of the city, as well as the last toll booth before entering, which happened to have a welcome sign in various languages showing you how touristic this place is. After passing the last toll booth, we get to the newer, more modern suburban developments of Guanajuato. This part of town is practically separated from the historic center by mountains. So from here we take the main road in town through the mountains to the more colonial side of town. And as we do so, we come across a fairly new and sizable government building, being that the city of Guanajuato is also the capital of the state of Guanajuato, even though it is not the largest city. We also get our first taste of the many tunnels you find in this city. Shortly after, we enter the colonial part of Guanajuato, and when visiting these historic cities, I tried to patron historic hotels for the experience. For this, I reserved my room in the very rustic Hotel Real de Minas, Guanajuato, which happened to be one of the most prominent hotels in town. And though I cannot verify, I was told that this hotel used to be a former hacienda, explaining its massive footprint as well as the attention to detail you find here. Walking along the front side of this hotel just to get to the main entrance reaffirms the sheer size of this establishment. And just like many other historic hotels I have been to in this country, this place felt like a museum with so much detail on the inside. Once you make it to the hotel room, it almost seems like you've stepped into another time period, with all the woodwork, ceramic work, and even brick ceilings. The location of this hotel is quite ideal, in my opinion at least, being that it is at the beginning of the historic zone of Guanajuato. This allows you to park your car here and walk into town without having to wrestle the traffic in the more narrow streets further in. But before heading into town, I did want to take a little extra time to observe the many artistic details of this beautiful establishment.
So in front of us we have a salon. Again, this used to be an old hacienda that has been turned into a hotel. This has to be one of the biggest hotels here in Guanajuato. But Guanajuato is a very old city.
As you can tell, this hotel almost felt like a maze with a surprise around every corner. This really motivated me to discover more of this place. The city of Guanajuato itself was established in the 1500s after the discovery of silver in the area. This city supposedly became one of the main global centers for silver, which would explain such extravagance. To be expected, just like other sizable hotels, I also ran into a pretty large pool, but of course in a much more rustic style that almost made it look like a postcard, in my opinion at least. If you decide to swim, keep in mind that it does get cold here from time to time because of the elevation. It was now time to leave the hotel and start my walking tour of Guanajuato, which was only a few blocks away. And like I've said before, I love walking through cities because of the many surprises you sometimes run into.
Look at this, guys. We got full-sized cows just chilling in the park. I'm just going to approach them, see if they feel a little offended. Then if they do, I'll back off. The things you see when you travel.
As I continued walking into town, I could not help but notice how colorful the buildings in this city are. And shortly after leaving the hotel, I run into the Plaza of Frogs across the street, which from what I understand is a plaza celebrating the shape of the mountains around the city. It was at this point that I ran into my first experience with street food, which happened to be cheesecake made with pecans. This pastry to me had a texture similar to creamy pudding. As we inch closer to the core of Guanajuato, we start to see more of the many tunnels in this city. From what I understand, these tunnels were initially created for drainage purposes by rerouting the water from the Guanajuato River going through town. They now also serve as a very creative solution for traffic issues in a historic city crammed into the mountains with very little room to expand its street infrastructure. So vital are the tunnels that even buses use them to escape the traffic above. The coolest thing about these tunnels, in my opinion at least, is how they go under and through homes, inspiring many artists throughout the different time periods and making Guanajuato one of the most unique cities in this country and in the Americas as a whole. This tunnel system is so extensive that it almost feels like some sort of historic underground highway system with many entrances and exits, providing an abundance of opportunities to access different points in the city without having to battle the traffic in the narrow streets above. So much creativity was put into the system that even parking lots were built into the mountain underneath the city. Reverting back to our walking tour, we finally get to the main street of the historic core of Guanajuato, which is Avenida Benito Juarez.
We're about to get to Avenida Juarez, Benito Juarez, which is basically the main street that meanders through downtown. And the reason why I say meander, because again, this city is situated in a canyon, so even though it is the main street, it goes in a very windy path through the canyon, as you will see. And just like the other colonial cities in this country, you do find a wealth of beautiful cathedrals. All right, we just turned on Avenida Benito Juarez and we've entered into the market area of the street. So I see a lot of little stores, and then it will slowly start to transition into a different area, more with restaurants and bars, coffee shops, etc. It gets quite crowded here, as you can tell.
I soon come across my second street food, which happened to be a very creamy pudding-like dessert with tapioca. At this point, we start to see more tour buses to be expected, as well as one of the most prominent historic structures in the city.
After walking around in this market area of the city, we actually come across the main market building of the city, which actually looks quite beautiful. And we're gonna go inside because you know me, I love discovering these places. And sometimes you can find even really good food. So let's check it out.
From what I understand, Guanajuato's Mercado Hidalgo was initially constructed to be a train station. Once the structure was built, however, it was transformed into a market instead and was inaugurated in 1910. Being that this was originally constructed to be a train station probably explains the amount of detail that went into this majestic structure. And as I entered this market, something very peculiar caught my eye, which was candy in the shape of something this city is famous for.
Candy in the shape of what seems to be the mummies, being that the city is known for the mummies. Only for 20 pesos.
Though I do not succeed every time, I do make an effort to get at least one shirt from every destination I visit. Enjoy some raw footage of this market, and we're about to discover one of the most iconic local dishes in one of the stands.
Caminos de Guanajuato, que pasas por tanto pueblo. No pases por Salamanca, y allí me hiere el recuerdo de
Out of all the food stands, I was able to find one selling Guanajuato's famous enchiladas named after its mines, which is Enchiladas Mineras. These enchiladas were prepared with carrots and potatoes, making them rather unique. And of course, you had cheese placed inside the tortillas and then rolled up. As a final touch, thin slices of meat were cooked to be placed on top of the enchiladas. And voila, you had Guanajuato's famous Enchiladas Mineras. Being that I was really hungry, I also decided to order chile relleno on the side. And I have to say that these Enchiladas Mineras are one of my favorite enchiladas in Mexico.
Very, very good.
Before leaving, I wanted to take one last look at this beautiful, massive complex from atop. Shortly after leaving the marketplace, we run into one of the many pedestrian entrances to the tunnel system underneath. We also come across another one of the many beautiful parks in this city, and that is Jardín Reforma. This park also happened to be in front of one of the tunnel entrances used by vehicles. As we enter this park, we get a better appreciation for the details that went into it. And the views were stunning looking into the park as they were looking into the city from the park. Many parts of Guanajuato are so aesthetically beautiful that to me it almost feels surreal. From what I understand, this space was originally used for an open-air market until it was converted to the park you see here. Curiously, you find a monument dedicated to a very big figure from the other side of the world. And that is Mohandas Gandhi, the man credited with India's independence movement. This statue was supposedly gifted to Guanajuato in 2019 by the Indian government. As we push forward, we're about to come across one of the main things this city is known for, which is quite possibly one of the most romantic places in the country, as well as the temptation of more delicious food along the way.
Some of the best chicken that I've ever had has been in Mexico, and you can see why. Alright guys, one of the biggest attractions in the city is Callejón del Beso, which is a place that many couples come to take a picture kissing romantically because it is so narrow, and there's even a story behind this particular location from what I've heard. And guess what, guys? There's even a line here.
What I initially thought was a line was actually a tour group heading towards the most famous part of Callejón del Beso, which we see in front of us where the street turns. This spot supposedly became famous because of one of Mexico's most well-known tragic stories of a forbidden love, in which the daughter of a wealthy family living on one side of the street fell in love with a much less affluent miner living right across the street, and this couple would often kiss in secrecy from balcony to balcony. This resulted in the name Callejón del Beso, or Alley of the Kiss. Story has it that the father of the daughter became enraged when he witnessed the couple kissing and ended up killing both of them, making this place a symbol of forbidden love and a very big romantic attraction. I even witnessed a sign explaining in detail different types of kisses. And when I visited, people were able to go upstairs of each one of the opposing homes to kiss their loved one from balcony to balcony for a fee, of course. I was even told that there is a local belief about those who end up kissing here.
This means that if a couple kisses here, that their love will be eternal. Who knows?
As we push forward to the next attraction in this amazing city, we come across another entrance to the tunnel system underneath. And we also get a better sense of how the main street of Benito Juarez meanders tightly through the mountainous city of Guanajuato. This creates such an aesthetically pleasing walking experience with stunning architecture in practically all directions. And at this point, we come across one of the most centric points in the city's historical core, which is the very narrow Plaza de la Paz, where two roads converge in front of the very impressive Basilica Colegiata de Nuestra Señora de Guanajuato. This basilica and plaza are so captivating in the day or night, especially with all the beautiful and colorful shops and restaurants, creating a very appealing environment where you can sit down, relax, and have a meal, or even shop with the soothing sound of the church bells. The basilica itself was built in the Baroque style and is one of many structures built in the 1600s because of the city's mineral wealth. By the way, Plaza de la Paz gets its name from a monument in this plaza that celebrates the end of the Mexican Independence War. As we get deeper into the afternoon, the temperature starts to fall because of the high elevation, so keep that in mind when visiting this city.
Alright, in case you guys didn't know, this city actually has a pretty big university here. So you will see elements of that all over the city. And this is Avenida Benito Juarez continuing further up into the city. But I'm going to make a quick left into this little callejon, or this little alleyway, because I found online a coffee shop that seems to have pretty good reviews, 4.9. We'll see how it is. Let's check it out. Gives us a reason to check out another street in this city that really looks like a maze. Almost from every angle, it feels like you're going down a labyrinth. It is somewhat easy to get lost here if it wasn't for the fact that, of course, the whole city is practically in a canyon.
Aside from looking for the coffee shop, we are also heading towards the university, which happens to be one of the most beautiful universities in the country, as you will see. And even though we're off the main drag, we still see cute shops and restaurants, some with quite creative names, and others with creative ways to advertise their products. But I have noticed a lot of creativity in many university towns. To be expected, you find shopping centers nestled in stunning colonial buildings, some of which contain beautiful courtyards and even fountains. I even ran into a display of candles with very creative designs, which does not surprise me, being that Guanajuato and the Mexican culture as a whole are big into candles. One of the biggest joys of traveling, in my opinion at least, is running into very interesting and unique businesses as I walk around. This shop that I found not too far away is a prime example of such places, with its pig-shaped pastries filled with salty or sweet fillings. Even though I had not planned on it, I had to purchase something, being how cute these baked goods were. And I ended up getting one with Spanish chorizo inside. At this point, before arriving to the university, we come across another prominent religious structure, and that is Templo de la Compañía de Jesús Oratorio de San Felipe Neri. This magnificent structure was supposedly also built in the Baroque style during the 1700s and has to be one of the most unique buildings in the city, with a dome that is more like that of the Vatican or Capitol buildings in the US. I also came across an art exhibit from a contemporary artist, Francisco Toledo, who was from Mexico City and was supposedly regarded as an activist, promoting the preservation of the Oaxacan way of life and culture through art, being that his parents were of Zapotec descent. This artist also seemed vehemently against genetically modified food that has plagued modern society in favor of more natural, traditionally prepared food. We finally arrived to Guanajuato's famous and stunning university, just a few blocks off the main drag, and right next to the Templo de la Compañía de Jesús Oratorio that we just witnessed. One of the first thoughts that came to my mind as I approached this place was how lucky one has to be to go to school in such a captivating environment. From what I understand, the University of Guanajuato was established in the 1700s, making it one of the oldest historic universities in the country. Some statistics put the attendance in the school at over 30,000, while others put it well over 40,000 students, showing you the magnitude and size of this university. And this is why the city is also known for a pretty vibrant nightlife. One of the first things that I run into as I'm entering is what is supposedly the university's library, built into one of the lower levels of the building, and even had a coffee shop in the entrance. Aside from the obvious, which is a wide array of books, this library had a really cool ambiance being inside of the historical building, as well as really cool ornaments on the ceiling, and even some very interesting historical displays, like this machine with a paper containing a phrase that roughly translates to, "There are those who write to read a book that doesn't exist." To be honest, I almost felt like I was in a museum, and another really cool aspect of this library was that it contained multiple levels on what seemed to be a slope. Being that this library had a coffee shop, you know I was tempted to indulge in a matcha latte.
Matcha cheers.
It is not every day that I get to enjoy a drink in an environment like this. Stay tuned as we continue discovering this very special city, starting with one of the most famous and beautiful theaters in this country, and then moving on to what is arguably one of the best viewpoints in any colonial city that you can access using a tram on the mountainside. This viewpoint even has a massive statue of a local hero that you can actually climb inside of. But most importantly, we will discover one of the crowning jewels that makes the city so unique, which is an extensive collection of mummies putting you face to face with the concept of death in such an eerie and vivid way. We will, however, finish off the night on a much more positive note as we join a very famous and joyous local tradition.
Cantando alegre bajo de un balcón, cantando siempre a la música, la estudiantina llena de emoción. Es muy alegre estudiantina, es muy alegre su cantar, cantando al ritmo del instrumento que llegó a la boca. No sé dónde hago siempre lo que quiero. Y mi padre seré.